Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden, and this guy right next to me, his name is Tim, and this is Second Legacy, and thank you for stopping by. We have got a situation brewing in Washington, Tim, and we've got to talk about it. We have got to hit this. There's a situation right here, and I'm just so amped to get your opinion on this because we haven't talked about it offline. I'm pretty stoked about this.
Yeah, kind of going into this one blind.
No, I love it. This is when the real goodness happens. So, people of the Second Legacy, if you have been living under a rock over the last 24 hours, you would not know that Kevin McCarthy has been ousted as Speaker of the House for the Republicans. And this entire thing has unleashed a lot of stuff that we're going to break down. We're going to go where it's been, where it currently is, and where it's going. And that is why we are excited about this episode. So, Tim, I have to start every episode with you. How are you doing? Because this is paramount information.
Doing good, because every time you ask means I'm, one day closer to deer season. So.
Oh, okay. You get a little deer fever situation going on over there?
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm feeling the urge.
That's so great. It's one of the best things. If you guys out there have never hunted, I highly encourage you to do it once. It's a magical experience. But
it truly is.
That is not why we are here. We've got to talk about a different type of season. It's rhino season, Tim. It's rhino season.
It is rhino season. Hey,
yeah,
on the topic of wait, well, hold on.
Oh, hey, go. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to do a complete U-turn here. Talking about hunting made me think of something I read in the news yesterday about on Catalina Island in California, the mule deer are overpopulating, and so they're going to bring in a helicopter hunt crew to bring the numbers down, and everybody got all up in arms about it, saying that it was cruel and inhumane that they were going to shoot and kill these deer that are starving to death and wiping out the population of other animals on the island and destroy the vegetation and all this other stuff. They're going to die a slow, painful death, or they could die a quick, merciful death. But what really struck me as funny was that the state of California contracted with this organization, and it made the news that they hunt with AR-15 type rifles. I didn't think you could do that. I didn't think they were for that.
That is, oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my God. Are those deer wearing Kevlar vests?
Being sprayed with lead from orbit, those weapons of war, or they just regular old hunting rifles like every other gun on the planet. Just, man, it loads itself, but looks mean in the eyes of the unknowing. Anyway.
You know what, Tim? That was very astute. I like that because, I've heard that California said AR-15s are, as you said, space weapons, and they're evil and they're bad and they should have no place except when they contract them to come down to do hunting, which I thought, to your point, they said it couldn't be used for.
Yeah. I was blown away by that. Yeah. So anyway, okay. Now.
No. Now we're back. Now we're back. That was a good mule deer. That was just a good. But no, I think it was apropos. So now that we've had our mule deer moment and hunting and worked in a little California hypocrisy, let's talk about something else from California. How about that McCarthy? How about that McCarthy getting smoked? What do you think about that high level? Just high level before we get into the details.
Okay. So McCarthy is your typical, Republican, if you will. He's from the state of California. He's a watered down Republican. I would say, I go so far as to say perhaps neocon.
Okay.
And it's so typical of the Republican Party. And we've talked about this before. The Republican Party is a party of a bunch of do-nothings. Even when they have a majority, they don't really do much. And so McCarthy is another one of those types of Republican leaders that just kind of sits on his hands a bunch. He tries to play both sides of the aisle, and he's just not very effective or good at it. You know what I mean? And so I think he's one of the weaker speakers that we've seen in quite some time. And should he go? Yes. How he went, does that help their party? I can't say it's my party, their party going into the election cycle. That's open for debate.
That is open for debate. So let's walk through what happened here, because there's a lot of stuff in the past that makes this so crucial. I really love tying these things together and following long stories like this. So, Tim, back in January, we were talking about it, or we're at least offline, we were talking about it, about how the speakership was up for grabs. And in order to get it, Kevin McCarthy made a deal with the conservatives that said one vote for a motion to vacate, which is what is basically the removal vote initiation from his speakership. They also gave him, he also gave a bunch of committee ships to Freedom Caucus members and a lot of conservative members. Chip Roy was one of them, et cetera, Jim Jordan. But they basically had him by the coattails until he made a mistake, in their opinion. Now, what caused this was the partnering with Democrats on the funding bills, all of the different undermining, at least from the Republican perspective, of the budgetary process and shutting down the government and the Ukraine funding. All these pieces culminated in Matt Gaetz filing a motion to vacate. And wouldn't you know it, Tim, they removed him.
Yeah. And here's what's really shocking is who voted to remove him. 8 Republicans and 208 Democrats.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting piece, because there's so many things. Yes, very true. This is where it gets really interesting, because he had to go to the Democrats to get them to bail him out because he didn't have enough people in his own party to do it. The Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat leader, said, yeah, we ain't got the votes for you. Sorry. So he got caught between the moderate Democrats not doing it, the moderate Republicans not doing it, and the conservatives who said, nah, that ain't happening. This guy just played this so badly. I mean, man, he got smoked by both sides.
Here's what we saw in this move, right? So the Democrats always move in lockstep. And I think that's a holdover from the Nancy Pelosi years, right? Mm-hmm. She maintained a authoritarian control, if you will, over her caucus. And she just would not let anybody defect. And if you dared cross her, she could make your political life absolute hell. And so she was, able to get everybody to do that. And it seems like that's just kind of carrying over, because I will guarantee you that there would be some Democrats that probably didn't want to go along with this scheme because they didn't know what the outcome might be, but they still voted in lockstep, right? Yes. Just to stick their thumb in the eyes of the Republicans. And then you had the 8 defectors, which shows disunity in the Republican Party. And then you have this big firestorm brewing again, all coming up onto an election year. It makes makes Republicans look really weak and indecisive. And they really kind of are. But here's the danger in all this, right? So we watch the Democrats move in lockstep, but the Republicans, they don't always move in lockstep. We'll see them defect over to Democrat causes all the time, right, on votes. And just a handful, but that's all it takes when you only have the thinnest of majorities anyway. Right. And so they only have a few seats, right? And so all it's going to take is just a couple of wishy-washy Republicans that are mad about the whole thing, and then they can actually install Jeffries as the speaker, even though the Republicans have the majority. That's the danger.
Absolutely possible. No, it's absolutely possible. I don't think that they would dare do it. In an election year with everything that's going, I honestly don't think that they would do it. But to your point, it's a danger. We're not ruling anything out. We are merely analyzing what's going on, because anything could happen. So you got to pay attention to this stuff.
But if he does, the threats to our rights would be elevated, right?
Oh, absolutely elevated. Yeah. So now here, because that speakership position is so crucially important. Mm-hmm. So now here's the flip side of that, Tim. Say that the worst case scenario is Hakeem Jeffries is the road that they choose to spite the Republicans. Well, on the other end of that, you can get somebody who's even more conservative and who's more after everything that's going on, because McCarthy was very hands off. I mean, speaking of Pelosi, he even let her stay in the speaker's office. This guy, man, and the first action of the new speaker, temporary one, was remove Nancy Pelosi, which to me is hilarious.
I know. He was so mad. Did you see the video of him banging the gavel right after the vote?
I didn't see. No, I didn't.
Goodness. Yeah, he was livid, to say the least. And then just look, that was like high school anger move, right? Like, and you get out of your office, because historically speaking, senior members that have held the speakership before, many times they get left with this little bonus office, if you will, right?
Right.
And so it's not unheard of, but for him to go, oh, and by the way, you get out, and she's at a funeral for Feinstein in California. I mean, again, it just looks bad. It makes them look like a bunch of angry children. It's like, come on, guys.
It does, but I'll be honest with you. I think we've seen both sides do this kind of petty,
yes, absolutely,
back and forth crap. I think it just speaks to the fact that the system as a whole is not as cohesive for the American people as we'd like. That's saying it nicely. And they kind of go back and forth. But now this is where I'm actually a little bit hopeful. I'm not trying to go like all full on, like we got this, woohoo, all rainbows and butterflies and puppy dogs. Jim Jordan just threw his hat in the ring. Now that's an interesting one. What are your thoughts on that? First take.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think he has the position within the party. Whether or not they would elect him, I don't know, man. He's pretty divisive.
No, of course not.
Yeah, he's pretty divisive in the party. Oh, him? I have my moments of where I like him. I mean, he certainly says things that
my moments. I like him.
But this is true of all politicians, right? It's not like if you show me a politician, very few of them will I say, oh yeah. I mean, like Thomas Massey. I think I probably have more in common with him than most of the other representatives in DC, right? And so you look at somebody like him. I look at a Jim Jordan, or I look at any one of the other top dog Republicans, and there are things that they do that kind of rub me the wrong way. So I'm not enthusiastic about any of the options, to be honest with you. But then most people aren't enthusiastic about the representatives in DC anyway. I mean, there's sub 10% approval ratings in most given years.
That's very, very true. So here's
go ahead.
No, that's very, very true. So here's why I would say that if I'm not going to go out and say, woo, Jim Jordan, and wave the flag and pound the drum and do all these things. However, something that I think that we do pretty well, or we at least attempt to do pretty well on this channel, is objectively look at what has happened and what kind of ties together as an overall picture, right? We've done it with Trump a few times. We've done it with different politicians. But with Jim Jordan specifically, he is the one who is in charge of the judiciary. He has brought forth subpoenas on the Hunter Biden stuff. He has brought forth letters against the ATF for their overreach and their usurping of power of Congress. That's a quote from his letters to them. He's also been the one holding the line with Greg Stube and Thomas Massey and Chip Roy in the Judiciary Committees last year underneath Pelosi's AR bans. And to your point, he may not be perfect. Right. But in those moments where the 2A was up against the ropes, he actually did deliver some very solid points.
Yes, him and Massey and those guys are definitely, from a 2A perspective, very good. But he has a quality about him that makes him kind of a rough choice. But go ahead.
Oh, no, I would absolutely agree. I'm only saying from a 2A perspective that what can get me potentially excited about that is his previous record on it. And if you give him the speakership and charge of all the committees and charge of subpoena power, you've got Biden impeachment, you've got Hunter Biden documents, you've got you've got Congressional Review Acts on executive rules that are passed through the ATF. I mean, all of these things, which are kind of our sweet spot and what we focus on, you do have that potential. Can't guarantee it.
Yeah, that's the problem. You can't guarantee it because I don't trust any politician. But
oh no, of course not.
For him, so going back to the speakership and why it's so critical, especially to 2A causes, why the speakership and having a strong 2A advocate in the speakership is important is because the speaker will control what actually goes to the floor for a vote. So the anti-gunners could put together the wildest, most comprehensive, yet most dangerous, likely to pass gun control package that might pull off a couple of Republican defectors and actually get it through the House. But if it never goes to the floor for a vote, then that's really not a threat. So
right. No, it's true.
So
that's true.
Right. So there's certain things that the speaker can do, tie things up in committee and not allow votes and stuff like that, or push things to a vote. Right. Yes. So it goes the other way as well. And so, this is one thing that Pelosi was masterful with. Granted, she's the enemy of freedom, but I mean, she really knew how to play the game. And then when it goes to somebody like a Jim Jordan, does he have that experience? Does he have that drive to play that same type of game? Possibly, because he is willing to step outside of the comfort zone and say and do things that 80% of the other Republicans wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
But, there's another nomination looming out there, though.
Well, there's always more nominations looming, but who's not nominating himself? Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, I mean,
he pulled his name from the hat.
Did he? Yeah, I mean, he's probably done with this. I mean, the guy had to make a deal. He had to know this was coming.
Absolutely.
With agreeing to the deal where just one person could bring it, a vote of no confidence or a vote to vacate. It's going to happen because he had that party of 8 that were constantly threatening him with it. I mean, he had to know it was coming. So is he, angry about it all? Of course he is. I was trying not to say the P word.
Yeah, of course. You can't say.
And I'm not talking about pickle. Yeah,
pickle. That's what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna go with. Well, it's, the piece of this that I think is worth noting, right? So a lot of of course, the media is up in arms, be like, this disruption to the norms. Yeah, the norms that you control. That's why you're upset. Anyway, the big piece about this is right. With McCarthy, you had someone who was kind of centrist, rhino, almost Democrat, very, very rhino-y,
Oh yeah,
he would play
very much a California
little bit of the
Republican.
game. Yes. He would play the game a little bit of, oh, we're going to go after this conservative cause because this is right and just, but then he never would do it. But he would also move to the center under the guise of negotiation and bipartisanship. That whole 80s, 90s, and early 2000s game of politicians. That's what they've been doing for 30 years. Right?
He's your typical Republican in the same vein as Arnold Schwarzenegger was a Republican, you know, in the state of California. I mean, seriously, anywhere else in the country, people would look at him and go, you're nowhere near on the political spectrum being close to Republican or conservative.
I would agree.
So
I would agree.
Yeah. And McCarthy's probably a little bit more right on the line on that spectrum than Schwarzenegger, but you know, still, I don't put much stock in California Republicans because they're so wishy-washy.
Right. I mean, you look back at that sheriff that we talked about who was standing up to Gavin Newsom, the entire 13-minute speech he gave, he wasn't happy with it. Then he said he was going to enforce it.
Right.
Oh, good job.
That's kind of where they are. Yeah.
That's a good vibe. It's a good example. But you know, the thing that I think is the real big takeaway here, there's two things. The first thing that I want to say is if you've got the conservative faction, let's say 8, 10, 15, whatever, the conservative faction in the House of Congress, they are not happy with a rhino. And then the more moderate to Democrat-leaning Republicans aren't happy with a Matt Gaetz or a conservative or a Lauren Boebert or a MTG or a, you know, whatever. If you look at Jim Jordan has qualities that appeal to both of those sides. Right. I think that's an important piece to factor in. We're going to see where it goes, but that's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing, you know, I think this is like, to me, I would just watch the hair melt off people because we've heard a lot of, hey, let's get Trump in there. Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, you know, well, this is the first time that somebody like Getz has proposed this. I mean, he proposed this once before. So, so here it is once again, and it's making the news cycle today, where reporters are asking Trump, "Would you consider becoming Speaker of the House?" Now, keep in mind, folks, we're so used to somebody that's already elected to Congress being the Speaker, typically the party that has you know the control of that chamber. They win just because a vote is held, but everybody can vote. It is possible, like we were talking about earlier, that you could have a Democratic speaker, yet a slim Republican majority. But there is nowhere is it written that you have to be a member of Congress. I could be voted speaker. Just get a phone call. Hey, Tim, you know, we just held a vote, and hey, you're speaker. And next thing I know, I'm on a jet to DC, right? So it could work that way. So go ahead with old Trumpster.
Oh, the Trumpy Trump. Okay, so. This is such a great way to end this episode. So basically, guys, what's happening here is you've got the nomination process going, and people can throw many people in as they want. There's votes, there's not votes, whatever. So you've got Jim Jordan, you've got Byron Donalds, you've got Comer, you've got Scalise, all these people out there that have the potential. And then someone just goes, hey, what about Trump? Okay, so let's just think about the optics of this for a second. I'm not going to say pro or negative. I'm just going to lay it out. You've got someone who is leading in the polls right now for president. I mean, again, that's way, way out, but it's enough to make Democrats freak out and be uncomfortable. Let's just say it there. Leading in the polls. He's indicted on 91 charges. Again, whether they're fictitious, not fictitious.
All over the country.
All over the country. Again, not saying pro or con on it. I'm just saying, like, objectively. And then he's also got an axe to grind with Biden, Pelosi, and a lot of other congressional members. And he's still going to be running for president the whole time.
I say we vote him in. Let's do it.
You just
it's just so funny.
You just want to watch the world burn, don't you, Tim?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just it. The one thing I love about Trump is he is a disruptor. I think everybody that watches this channel would agree that our government is wildly out of control, right? They infringe on our rights on a daily basis. They don't take us seriously. They think they can just impose their will on us. And even though he doesn't really relate to us, I mean, the guy's filthy rich. He's lived a pampered life. But if you take a look at the actions that he's done when he did have the presidency for 4 years, yeah, he did some things that really kind of weren't positive for the 2A community.
It sucked.
Yeah, right? So would this be a big win for the 2A group if he became speaker? Probably not. But
he would learn what the pistol brace rule is, though.
Yeah, I mean, he just learned, so maybe he could do something with that, like keep the vote off the floor or something like that. I don't know, but not that they are voting on it, but it's just, I mean, the only thing that Trump really brings to the table is the fact that he just makes everybody so mad, especially people on the left that they're so fixated on just destroying him any way he can. And if he gets elevated to the speakership in the midst of all this craziness, it will further break Washington.
Oh my God.
And I don't know why I like the idea of this whole thing just coming apart at the seams, because I want to see it go back in time to where we're back to a constitutional based republic where we're not constantly infringing on rights. And if I can break this thing apart, it seems awfully appealing at times.
You know, I can just see it now, Tim. Hold on. This is a magic moment. I can see it. The clapping, the walking down the stage. He ascends to the podium, grabs the gavel, and the first thing he says is he goes, "My, how tables have turned." Oh man, it would have a beautiful element, wouldn't it?
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
We're going to do great
things. This is going to be the greatest speakership of the House that you've ever seen. Pelosi, they said she couldn't be beat, but she did, and she will, and I'm gonna. So let's get this. Hey, let's impeach this guy. I don't like him.
Yeah, dude, you can't make this stuff up. I swear.
No, you really can't.
The last, coming up on 8 years of politics in the United States have been so wacky, so wild. Throughout my entire life, it's always been kind of a bland engagement being in politics. You know, when I was a child, people didn't really go at each other. They didn't get disinvited from family events and things based over politics. You move along the timeline a little bit, get to 2023, and all of a sudden, you voted for who? Oh, you can't come to Christmas dinner. We're so divisive as a nation, and politics have amped up so much. And then here we find ourselves literally living in the documentary of Idiocracy.
It's a situation, but it's going to be great.
It's going to be great, and we're gonna do great things, and we're gonna make America great again. We're gonna make the speakership great again. So anyway, it's on that note, folks.
Have you seen my gavel? This is a stupid gavel. I want a golden one.
He'll show up with a gold one. I was thinking the same thing. He'll show up with a brand new one. The old one will disappear, and then this big gold gavel will show up. So anyway, it's going to be an interesting ride, guys. And depending on what happens, let's recircle back and talk about it, because if the worst case scenario happens and Jeff Reese becomes speaker, we're going to have a lot to talk about. If it's just some other neocon, we'll move along, because it's just going to be business as usual. All right, folks, thank you for watching The Second Legacy, and we'll talk to you all soon.